during the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens. I had been passing alone on horseback through a singularly dreary tract of country. At length I found myself, as the shades of evening drew on, within view of the melancholy House of Usher. With the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I looked upon the bleak walls, the vacant eye-like windows, the rank sedges, and the few white trunks of decayed trees. There was an iciness, a sickening of the heart. I reined my horse to the brink of a black and lurid tarn that lay by the dwelling, and gazed down upon the inverted image of the gray sedge and the ghastly tree stems reflected in the water. The mansion of gloom belonged to Roderick Usher, my boyhood companion. Many years had passed since our last meeting, but a letter had reached me. The writer spoke of acute bodily illness, of a mental disorder, and of an earnest desire to see me. A servant conducted me through dark and intricate passages to the studio of the master. Much that I encountered heightened the vague sentiments of dread. The carvings of the ceilings, the somber tapestries, the ebony blackness of the floors, the phantasmagoric armorial trophies that rattled as I strode. On one staircase I met the family physician, whose countenance wore a mingled expression of low cunning and perplexity. The room I entered was very large and lofty, with long, narrow, pointed windows at so vast a distance from the floor as to be inaccessible from within. Feeble gleams of encrimsoned light made their way through trellised panes. Dark draperies hung upon the walls. The general furniture was profuse, comfortless, antique, and tattered. Many books and musical instruments lay scattered about. I felt I breathed an atmosphere of sorrow. Upon my entrance, Roderick Usher rose from a sofa. I gazed upon him with a feeling half of pity, half of awe. A cadaverousness of complexion, an eye large and luminous, lips thin and pallid, the now ghastly pallor of the skin, the miraculous luster of the eye, the silken hair that floated rather than fell about his face. He told me he suffered from a morbid acuteness of the senses. The most insipid food was alone endurable. All odors of flowers were oppressive. His eyes were tortured by even a faint light, and he was enchained by a superstitious impression regarding the dwelling itself, an influence which the gray walls and the dim tarn had brought about upon his spirit. But much of his gloom, he admitted, could be traced to a more palpable origin, the long-continued illness of his tenderly beloved sister, his only companion for long years. While he spoke, the Lady Madeline passed slowly through a remote portion of the apartment, and without noticing me, disappeared. Her disease had long baffled the skill of physicians. A settled apathy, a gradual wasting away, and frequent affections of a cataleptical character. That evening, she succumbed to the prostrating power of the destroyer. For several days ensuing, I was busied in endeavors to alleviate the melancholy of my friend. We painted and read together. I listened to the wild improvisations of his guitar. He painted strange pictures and composed haunting dirges. One of his songs told a dark allegory about a beautiful palace overtaken by evil things, but I could see that the deeper meaning of his verses was a full consciousness of his own reason tottering on its throne. One evening, Roderick informed me abruptly that the Lady Madeline was no more. He stated his intention of preserving her corpse for a fortnight in one of the numerous vaults within the main walls of the building. At his request, I personally aided him in the arrangements for the temporary entombment. The vault in which we placed her had been so long unopened that our torches, half smothered in the oppressive atmosphere, gave us little opportunity for investigation. It was small, damp, entirely without means of admission for light, lying at great depth beneath my own sleeping apartment. The door was of massive iron, and its immense weight caused an unusually sharp grating sound as it moved upon its hinges. We lifted the lid of the coffin and looked upon the face of the dead. The disease that had entombed her had left a mockery of a faint blush upon the bosom and face, and a suspiciously lingering smile upon the lip. We replaced the lid, secured the iron door, and made our way back to the upper chambers. And then an observable change came over my friend. He roamed from chamber to chamber with hurried, unequaled steps. The pallor of his countenance assumed a more ghastly hue. A tremulous quaver, as if of extreme terror, characterized his utterance. I beheld him gazing upon vacancy for long hours, as if listening to some imaginary sound. Late in the night of the 7th or 8th day after the entombment, I experienced the full power of such feelings. Sleep came not near my couch. I struggled against the nervousness that had dominion over me, but an irrepressible tremor pervaded my frame. Shaking it off, I paced rapidly through the apartment. A light step on the staircase arrested my attention. It was Usher. He entered bearing a lamp, a species of mad hilarity in his eyes. "You have not seen it?" he said abruptly. He hurried to the casement and threw it open to the storm. The impetuous fury of the entering gust nearly lifted us from our feet. A whirlwind had collected its force in our vicinity. The clouds hung so low as to press upon the turrets of the house. The undersurfaces of the agitated masses of vapor were glowing in the unnatural light of a faintly luminous gaseous exhalation that hung about and enshrouded the mansion. "Let us close this casement," I said, leading him to a seat. "I will read, and we will pass this terrible night together." I took up the Mad Tryst of Sir Launcelot Canning and began to read. As I read of Ethelred cracking the hermit's door, I heard what might have been the echo of that same sound from some remote portion of the mansion. I paused, but continued. I read of Ethelred slaying the dragon, and heard a harsh, protracted screaming. And when I read of the shield falling with a mighty ringing sound, a distinct, hollow, metallic reverberation echoed through the house. I rushed to Usher's chair. A sickly smile quivered about his lips. "Not hear it?" he murmured. "Yes, I hear it. Long have I heard it. We have put her living in the tomb. I heard her first feeble movements in the hollow coffin. I dared not speak. And now, the rending of her coffin, the grating of the iron hinges, she now stands without the door." As if in answer, the huge antique panels threw slowly back their ponderous jaws, and there stood the Lady Madeline of Usher. There was blood upon her white robes. For a moment she trembled upon the threshold, then with a low moaning cry, fell inward upon her brother, bearing him to the floor a corpse, a victim to the terrors he had anticipated. From that chamber, and from that mansion, I fled aghast. As I crossed the old causeway, a wild light shot along the path. I turned to see the full, setting, blood-red moon shining vividly through the jagged fissure in the wall of the house. While I gazed, the fissure rapidly widened, the mighty walls rushed asunder, and the deep and dark tarn at my feet closed sullenly and silently over the fragments of the House of Usher.